Hello, everybody, and welcome to the next episode of the Unbreakable Her podcast, where we make space for the stories of unbreakable women. In this episode, we sit with a story that so many women will recognize and likely resonate with. Women have a long history of pressing through feeling unwell, pushing past headaches, exhaustion, dizziness, pain, or the quiet sense that something just isn't right. We carry children, jobs, household, relationships, and the weight of expectations. And far too often, we tell ourselves we can handle it a little longer. But sometimes the body insists on being heard. Today's guest shares what it was like to ignore the very early signs, chalking her symptoms up to life with three very young children and the exhaustion that normally brings. She kept going, she kept pushing, she kept showing up until the symptoms grew louder and more strange and impossible to explain away. What she thought was fatigue turned out to be something far more serious. Today, she's here to share her story, her strength, and her triumph. We have a very special guest with us. We have Kenderlyn Turner, also known as Tira, but for you outsiders, it's Kenderlyn. Um, but we're very excited to have her with us today. The thing that we're going to talk about, Tira has been through a lot of things and seen a lot of things in her life, but the one thing that I think will be really helpful to talk about today is she had brain surgery, which she's younger than me, by a little bit. So at such a young age, that is something that you don't really hear about. But the story of it, the whole trajectory of it is really a powerful. There's some messages in there that she's definitely going to share with us. But we're going to talk about that. I know Tara from church. We spent years going to church together, and we spent a lot of time together when we were younger. And most of it was just serving, like in ministry, in church, and growing up in church. And now, Kenderlyn, this is back when we were teenagers and you know little ones back in the day, and
Yes.
now we are both good and grown with families and all of that. So I think I'll give you a little space to just introduce yourself a little bit. So, yeah, tell us who you are.
Well, first, I want to say I'm really grateful to be here. Thank you for having me as a guest. So I am from Delaware. Yay. Born and raised. I am a mother of four and wife to my husband of 16 and a half years. And um, Together we do serve in the church, in the ministry. But really, I'm just life is busy with being mom and working full time. I've been a long term employee of the state of Delaware. That's really me in a nutshell. That's the gist of me. Yeah.
Perfect. So, I think this is going to be interesting because this whole story I actually don't really know
Yeah.
either. So, I'm going to be learning about this as anybody watching or listening is also learning about this. So, you had brain surgery.
Yeah.
So, take us back to when you started to, like, how you came to that. Was there something going on that made you say, wait, I need to get checked out? Was it a matter of an emergency that happened? Like, tell us what happened and what was happening in your life
Sure.
when this happened.
Sure. So it was I just had my daughter, Emma. She was about 6 months old. So, um, had her, and then we still had our other two children were young as well. I have two boys. And Emma and our middle child are only 14 months apart. So, they were all still very young. Um, and I started to experience a bunch of, a lot of fatigue, chronic fatigue. I was going back and forth to work. And at that time, I was working an hour away from where I lived. So um, that's important because a lot of the fatigue affected my my commute. going
Okay.
an hour each way, home and to work. So I just noticed like I would be very tired. But it was beyond just like tired, like lack of sleep. It was physically, emotionally, mentally just drained and just really having to take extra effort in thinking. Around this time, I also started to have loss of memory.
Hmm.
So I could have a conversation in 10 minutes. It was like never existed.
Oh wow.
And so my my husband and I, he would we we would talk about things, and this could be like a grocery list, something common like that, grocery
Hmm.
list, and um 10 minutes later, it's like, did you remember to get this and get that? We didn't talk about that. What are you talking about? And
So you
he's
mean
looking
like
at me,
wiped from your
wiped
memory,
out,
like gone?
like it never existed.
Okay.
And he's looking at me and he'd be like, "What? We literally just talked about this." And I'm like standing him down, and this was like day after day. I'm standing him
Okay.
down saying, "No, um, I know I'm not crazy. Like, no," because to me, the reality was it never happened, but this was something that
Hmm.
kept happening. And still, I'm just thinking that I'm just tired from a new family, from having young kids, and just
Hmm.
jumping back into work, and still all the things that go with motherhood. So, I just thought that I was just experiencing um, just the regular mom overload.
Hmm.
Um, but at the time, my job, I was actually doing a job that I did every day. Um, I was processing criminal cases at that time for the court. And it's even though the cases are different, to process them, it's the same thing every day, every day.
Okay.
So the the way that my job worked, I was independently working, but I could be in the middle of processing a case, something I did every day, and literally would forget what the next step, what am I supposed to be doing?
Hmm.
And it would just leave my mind, my memory, everything. I would just go blank. So I never said anything to my coworkers, nobody around me. I literally would silently pray and be like, Lord, help me. Because I knew I'm supposed to be doing something and something that I knew to do, but I couldn't remember. I couldn't recall.
Hmm.
So it would leave me for a few minutes and then it eventually would kick back in. So after going through that, I was having headaches as well. But these were my pain tolerance is pretty high. Um, I mean, I delivered all of my kids, no pain meds. I'm accustomed to pain. So,
Not me. I am the chief epidural asker for her. Okay. And I should have asked for it sooner because I thought I was going to break apart. Anyway, that's not relevant to this story. Continue. High pain tolerance.
hey, yeah. I have no reasons for doing it that way. I didn't want anything near my spine.
Hmm.
Because and that's gonna be important also, but,
Okay.
scoliosis,
Oh,
I
okay.
dealt with that, and so I knew, I was able to do it without it.
Hmm.
So, um, pain for me it would take a lot for me to actually say something, like, uh, I'm uncomfortable,
Hmm.
but I started having these severe migraines, again, thinking it's just lack of sleep or just the stresses of still adjusting to being a mom of now 3 children, all
Hmm.
very young, 5 and under. Um, so day after day, I would say something. I eventually scheduled an appointment with my primary care doctor, and I explained to him, how I was feeling with the fatigue and everything. And initially, I mean, everything they test for, but my vitamin D was deficient. So he thought, it sounds like your vitamin D needs to be elevated. We're going to do something about that. Put me on a higher dosage of the vitamin D.
Mhm.
Um, and so gave me about 3 weeks, 4 weeks. Still, I was still having these same symptoms. Um,
Were they let me ask you, were they getting worse? Like, were the symptoms
so
getting worse, like, the lashes? Okay,
the migraines were getting worse. The fatigue, for me, it seemed like there was just no change.
okay.
So to me, even though it didn't get any worse, the fact that I've been on vitamin D this
Mhm,
long and it's still not improving, something's wrong. Um, but I still didn't know that it was something.
mhm,
So everything is like a whole process. So after went back to the doctor and was like, he of course do follow up. So how you feeling? Is anything improving? No. All right. So schedule me for a sleep test. Um, and I go through the whole I remember going through these sleep tests and having to make sure it was so like tedious,
mhm,
but um that came out to be nothing's wrong.
okay.
So in that area. But then it goes on to, well, something is going on because I'm still having these headaches. So they thought maybe the sleep test might tell why I'm having these migraines.
Mhm,
No. So then they send me for um, CAT scans and OCT scans, which is behind the eyes.
okay.
And so I go to a particular practice down here. It's a practice where they have a lot of different like doctors, nurse practitioners, PAs, physician's assistants.
Mhm,
And so I was seeing a PA for a while because it's a pretty popular practice,
mhm,
but um, I wasn't seeing an actual neurologist.
okay.
That's significant. So for this period of time, they sent me there. This is also where they did the sleep study. This is also after the sleep study, they start doing the CAT scans and the OCT scans, and there they saw where there was a little bit of elevation in my brain, in my head. Elevation meaning, because I was like, well, what does that mean?
Mhm,
Well, it looks like there's a little bit of swelling there. Okay, well, where does that come from?
mhm,
They never gave me an answer on where it came from. Okay, so th- at that time, the images were only showing that it was just elevated slightly,
mhm,
but my symptoms were producing more than what the images showed at that time.
okay.
And so they thought that this was something that could be resolved with medication. All right. Well, while we're going through this process, again, my kids are still very small. Now, like, it's really becoming a problem because not just in the conversations that my husband and I were having, and it would cause like slight disagreements because he's saying, We talked about this and you said
Mhm,
this." And I'm saying, "No, we didn't talk about this. And
mhm,
I don't remember this." And he's like, I know,
mhm,
I know I'm not crazy, and I'm saying I'm not crazy. So, it was going that little back and forth, but it really became an issue when I started to forget my children's. I had the baby Emma, forgetting her formula.
mm,
Um, Landon was still very small, and at that time was on a pacifier. And I remember one distinct time that we were pulling out of the driveway, and we were all in the car, and two car seats and a car seat in the back because all my kids were small. And
Ooh,
Leon
child.
and I were in the yeah, girl. And Leon and I were in the front. And um Landon starts whining. You wants whining for his pacifier. I want my pacifier. I want my And I'm looking at Leon and I'm like, can you give him what he's asking for? Like the kid. And that was another thing. I was being very irritable. Like
Mm.
it didn't take much for me to get irritated because I
Mhm.
was in pain, I was
Mhm.
tired, like all of the things. But I looked at him and I was like, "Can you give him what he's asking for?" And he was like, "You got the diaper bag.
Mhm.
I do not. I don't have it. I don't know where it is." And I looked down at my feet. I did have it. I brought it in the car with me. I just didn't remember.
Mhm.
And that was a distinct memory for me because it was at that time I pulled the pacifier out and I looked at him and I said, "I'm so sorry." Gave it to my son and I said, "Something is really wrong with me."
Mhm.
And it was like the first time that it registered. Like I knew every day I was going through these symptoms,
Mhm.
but rather than me just chalking it up to being tired as a new mom, I knew now, okay, I don't know why it was such an aha moment, but it was an aha moment for me.
Mhm.
So, um,
So
then
before you go on, what was
mhm.
Leon's response like in that moment? As these things were happening, was he was he pressing you like to get some more opinions about this stuff, or like was it just kind of trying to like following your lead on it?
Not yet, because he was still trying to bear with me, give me
Mhm.
grace,
Yeah.
because, he was working, he's in the medical field, so his schedules
Mhm.
then it's more stable now, but at that time, he was still doing, like, on-call shifts at the hospital, working in the
Mhm.
OR and things like that, and so a lot of the time, he would be gone
Okay.
and I would be the one, there with the kids, getting up early, getting them dressed, taking them to a daycare, going to work. And so he just was kind of giving me grace and
Okay.
thinking, like we both are thinking, like, it's just a new
It'll
motherhood
resolve
adjustment.
itself
Yeah,
eventually. Yeah, yeah.
yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So, but he was in his mind looking like every conversation that we're having, you saying it never occurred.
Mhm.
Uh, Mrs. Turner, something's not right, but he wouldn't really he was trying to be
Mhm.
careful, still trying to give me
Right.
grace. Um, but I love the fact that as time progresses, he starts to really advocate for me.
Okay.
And he goes above and beyond. So um when around this time also I was being medicated with this medicine that they thought would literally dry up the fluid that I started to accumulate. But it was about 7 or 8 months, and I was still having these.
Whoa.
Uh
Hold
huh.
on.
Mm-hmm.
7 or 8 months?
Yes.
Okay, I definitely thought you
Yes.
were gonna be like, "Yeah, it was 6 weeks, it was 8 weeks, and then 7 or 8 months."
Yes.
Wow.
And I was also going back and forth to doctors in all 3 counties. So Delaware has 3 counties. Still very small, but 3 counties to see different specialists. And going back and forth for to get imaging, then going to for them to see me about the images, for the images to still read the same, but my symptoms were still more severe than what the images were showing.
Mhm.
And like I said, I was seeing a PA still. He was the one that was medicating me up until it was March of 2016. And I specifically remember I was still doing photography at that time too. Um and it was a day that we had photography engagement that I had already had a contract, so I had to fulfill that. And we also had a loved one pass away. So it
Mm.
was a repast that we were at. The repast, I had a bad episode where I had this horrible migraine. And as I said, my pain tolerance is pretty high, but this really started to take me like down. My speech started to slur, and I was having like stroke symptoms.
Okay.
And that's when my husband was like, this was Saturday. He had already determined on that Monday, you're not going to work. You're staying home. I'm calling the doctor because something is not right. You are not my wife. This is not normal. And
Mhm.
somebody's going to do something about it. And I don't care. And this is what he's telling me. I don't care
Mhm.
what you say. You're not
Mhm.
going to work. And I was
Mhm.
like, yes, sir. Like, there's nothing else for me to say.
Right. Yeah.
And on Monday, he called um, the neurologist and told them, demanded. He said, now listen, there's a difference of the letters behind the name for a reason. She's been seeing a PA. She needs to see a neurologist.
Mm.
She needs a doctor, and I mean now. And I was still down. Like, I still couldn't recover from what happened on Saturday. This is now Monday.
Mm.
It seemed like every time my episodes were getting worse and worse, and it would take a longer period for me to like just come out of that
Mhm.
to function. So he took me to the doctor on Monday. They were like, "Oh, we'll get her at 1 o'clock. Can she get here at
Mhm.
1 o'clock?" Yeah, she'll be there. Got there at 1 o'clock, and God is so good because there was a new doctor who had just joined that practice. And this is a doctor that looked at my chart. We sat in that office. He looked at my chart and he just shook his head because he couldn't believe that it took this long
Mhm.
for if I'm still having these severe symptoms and they're
Right.
just going off of what the images said. He said, they've been medicating you for far too long. He said, we should have been did the next step.
Mhm.
And this is where I want to pause and say to any woman, if you know that something is not right in your body and you know you're not getting the answers, do not give up on how you feel. You know that something is wrong. Keep pressing the issue
Mhm.
because, you know, you're your only advocate.
Yep.
And we as women, we take a lot. You know, we're mothers and
Mhm.
we wear all the hats and we do all the things in life. But sometimes, you know, when you feel a pain and you know it's not a normal pain, when you feel even fatigue, anything, you find a lump, you find anything, and you know this is not the normal way for your body to either process things or you're not healing right or you're not moving right, functioning well, say something and don't let the first no or whatever they may think, if it's not solving the issue, please advocate for yourself. So,
That's a
um,
really I don't wanna,
yeah.
move from that too quickly. That's a really important admonishment too, because the things that you're saying that I really want to highlight is that for a lot of your symptoms, they just seemed like or you attributed it to being a mother of 3 young children, one who was only 6 months. So there is sort
Mhm,
of a natural like, "Oh, yeah, I'm gonna be tired." Like, I'm gonna even,
mhm,
you know, a lot of times, even for partnered women, like, you have a husband, but it's as a mom, like, that is a lot of the responsibility of it, and you feel it in a different way, and so that is very
yes.
true that as women, we often attribute things going wrong in our body to just okay, it's just that I'm doing the things that I'm normally doing, and it's just a little bit too much. Like, it's just,
Mhm,
it's taking a little bit more of a toll that I'm used to, and it will resolve itself. But, I love what you're saying, which is like, you know yourself, and there's
mhm,
this thing that we do sometimes when, like, we trust our instinct and we trust ourselves to make assessments about the other people in our lives we trust ourselves to make those assessments and to say like, "Oh, no, we need to do something different," or "We need to get an opinion," or "We need to see a doctor," but we don't always do that with ourselves.
Yeah,
Whether it's we don't trust ourselves, we don't believe ourselves, or we just think we have to keep pushing through. So I
that's
think that's a
it.
really important admonishment. It's like if your partner was going through that and you were saying the same things, you would have been like, nope, mm-mm,
Yep,
let's go."
yep.
Um, and so that is really important to say, trust yourself, trust your instinct. You're the expert on you. So something different, make sure you're going to get that checked out. So I think that that's
Yes.
really, really important. So
I could tell the difference between exhaustion and tiredness.
mhm,
Um, it was a very big difference. But, at this doctor's office, um, he looked at my chart and said, "We definitely need to move to the next step." And the next step was getting a, lumbar puncture or a spinal tap, the same thing. Um, and like I mentioned earlier, with, having all of my children without epidurals, I was very
mhm,
intentional about that. And now I didn't have a choice. Like, I
mhm,
needed to get this done
mhm.
in order to get to the root of the issue, or at least see if this would get to the root of the issue or tell
Right.
what's going on. And so you talk about fear. I was
Mhm,
very fearful, not necessarily driving down the road an hour away, dozing off. That didn't, I mean, it scared me, but this thing with getting a needle on my back,
mhm.
um, I was very scared.
I can't imagine that, having avoided that specifically because of your own history and knowing that, okay, that's not something that I wanted to deal with. I will deal with experiencing the full
Yep.
pain of childbirth 3
Yep.
times
3
to
times.
avoid that. And
Yeah.
now this is something that has to be
I
done.
must
Yeah.
do it. And I can't. I had to lay, on the table flat on my back. I could not move
Mm,
because, the least little bit of flinch could be an issue to my
mhm,
spine. And so I was awake, of course. So, um, when it was scheduled on St. Patrick's Day, and I remember, going in, they did allow my husband to come in with me, and the, tech person that was doing the needle puncture, um, went in my back, and immediately they were looking at, like, a screen or whatever, I couldn't really see, um, but as soon as they went in, you hear this, "Whoa," and I said, "What? What? Like, y'all can't," I said, "Y'all can't be doing that."
right.
He was like, he said, "No, I'm really sorry." He said, "But that's a lot." What he was saying was a lot of fluid. So the reason why the images from the MRI scans and the OCT scans behind my eyes wasn't really telling the full story is because, um, the puncture in my spine, the fluid in my spine was actually telling the rest of the story, and it was a lot. I was
Oh,
accumulating a lot
wow.
of what's called, CSF fluid, cerebral, spinal fluid. I was accumulating, it was a high amount, high volume. And so that right there was an indication, like, first of all, it was a sigh of relief for me because, oh, something is definitely wrong. I'm
Mhm.
not even thinking about, like, what this may mean. This was a sigh for me, like, I knew I wasn't crazy. At that point, they let me know that definitely there was a problem, there was an issue. I go back to the neurologist, and he's like, "Well, we have to refer you to a neurosurgeon because you definitely have a problem." And he was still on the issue that he couldn't believe that they were just medicating me all this time.
Oh, this is the neurologist had just who had just started at the practice. Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, he was a godsend. He was amazing, a very good doctor.
Mhm.
Young doctor, but very knowledgeable,
Mhm.
knew a lot about his field.
Mhm.
And but what I loved is he listened.
Mhm.
And he did not just he listened to the patient, but he also took the time to go over and review like the paperwork and the records
Mhm.
and put two and two together to really
Yeah.
understand and see what's been happening, and then what needs to be done. And so he moved very quickly on my case,
Mhm.
um and that was something that we really were grateful for, especially all this time that had been wasted, right?
So
So
be the from the, like, onset of symptoms, at least from, like, when you actually were like, "Yeah, I think something's wrong here," to the
mhm,
point of the spinal tap and really finding out that there is a serious issue, what was that length of time?
it was about almost a year. Yeah.
That's
Yep.
crazy. So that's what this neurologist was saying, like, why
Yeah,
would this
like,
even take
why
this
did this
long?
take so long? Yep.
Okay.
And the medicine, thankfully, it didn't harm me being on it as long as they had me on it, but I know that it was just because the images, they just thought that this was it. They weren't listening to me. They didn't listen to the symptoms. They were only looking at what was presented before them in the images, which,
Mhm.
I can kinda understand, but I'm literally telling you
Yeah.
that this is what I'm experiencing day to day.
Mhm.
When I'm saying memory loss, if that's not equivalent to what you're seeing, then do more to look into it. Why is
Right.
it taking so long?
Mhm.
And that's why I'm grateful for this doctor, Dr. Cologne. Amazing. Sandeep Cologne was his
Mhm.
name. And so from that point, they scheduled me to so this was March, and the dates are significant because they seem like it was something on every day that I had scheduled. May 23rd of that year, which was our wedding anniversary. Um we spent in the neurosurgeon's office all day long, which was in Wilmington. So that's why I can distinctly remember everything, even though, who wants to spend their wedding anniversary in the doctor's office? But hey, we were going through it together.
Mhm.
We just went and got something to eat when we were finally released out of there. But when I say this neurosurgeon, the office was so packed. He was just coming back from a vacation. So that's why we spent all day long there, because he was just now resuming seeing all his
Okay.
patients. I was a new patient. And so even though my referral was sent as kind of like a hurried thing,
Mhm.
we just had to take it and wait. And so we
Right.
did. Um, but when we got in that office, again, grateful for the doctor because he wasn't, and I have nothing against um, young doctors. Like I said,
Mhm.
my neurologist was a young doctor. My neurosurgeon was very experienced. Um, and the reason why that was okay with me is because he again looked at all the records, and he's looking at the images, and his immediate response was, "Okay, well, um, I don't really see the issue." He said, "I mean, I see there's an issue, but not too bad." And I looked at my husband, and we both kinda grinned at each other because we knew this was gonna be the same response that the others had already had.
Mhm.
And then he was like, "But okay, hold on." So he continued to look, opened up the results from my spinal tap, and the same response that that technician had, he had.
Mhm.
He said, "Whoa."
Mhm.
And Leon and I looked at each other, and we just kinda, like, chuckled. I even said to him, "Wait for it." And that's when he was like,
Uh-huh.
"Whoa, alright."
Mhm.
So, then he said, "Yeah, you definitely got a problem. Alright, we gotta schedule you for surgery." I was grateful because he wasn't very quick at first to just wanna cut up on me, just wanna go into
Mhm.
surgery, like, he wanted to make sure that there was definitely a need
Mhm.
to do this. That's not always common with doctors,
Mhm.
you know?
Especially surgeons, they like to cut.
Surgeons, that's
Yeah,
right.
they like to cut.
That's right.
Yeah.
Well, he wanted to make sure that it was definitely necessary, and he said it was, and so
Mhm.
he wanted to schedule me, like, very quickly.
Mhm.
But this was May 23rd. We had already scheduled our family vacation for June, and I didn't wanna go and be a pain,
Mhm.
and I also didn't wanna, like, come back off of that either, so I was like he kept throwing out dates. I was like, "I can't. No, we got family vacation." He was like, "Well,
Mhm.
y'all schedule another one." It's like, "No, it's like it's already scheduled. Our kids are looking forward to it."
Mhm.
They were still young. It wasn't the only one that really knew what was going on was Caden. So,
Mhm.
um, and he would have got over it. But I said I didn't because I was also concerned, like, I don't know what's gonna happen after. That's
Mm.
where my head was.
Mhm.
So then he threw out the date, couple more dates, and then he said, "Listen, this is the last date. We absolutely cannot go beyond this point."
Mhm.
And it was July 28th. And I was like, "That's my son's birthday,
Mhm.
Landon's birthday."
Mhm.
And Leon was like, "He will only be 3. He won't know. So whether we celebrate him before or after, he won't
Be
care.
alright.
He won't really, he'll be
Yeah.
fine."
Mhm.
So I said, "All right, schedule it." So it was July 20th, 2016 that I had my surgery.
So before we keep going there, when the neurosurgeon says, like, we have to have surgery, like, we need to perform
Mhm.
a surgery, does he break down exactly what they need to do surgically?
Yeah, and I had all the questions to ask.
Mhm.
So he informed us that because I was accumulating so much fluid on my brain was swelling and there was no place for it to go. And that's the reason why I was having the migraines. That's the reason why I was having all this pressure. That's the reason why I was losing my memory. It's the reason why I was having all of these different symptoms because I was accumulating fluid that I don't even know where the extra fluid came from. Nobody could answer that.
Mhm.
But I developed this somehow and it was in my brain and it had nowhere to release. And so he explained that they would have to put a device in my head with tubing to go through and it would uh he told me where they would somehow it's in my neck goes down to my abdomen for me to release the fluid.
Okay. So you are hearing this. So you did talk about the relief of once you had the spinal tap done, actually knowing, like, okay, there is something wrong. I knew there was something wrong, but now at least you guys have a name for it. You can see
Mhm.
it. Finally, somebody understands, like, this is not normal. This is not regular fatigue. So there was that relief. What is
Mhm.
happening when you hear this surgery that has to happen? What is going on for you internally?
Honestly, like, I was scared. So my life has been a series of things. So I've had some close calls before,
Mhm.
but now we're dealing with a whole nother aspect. And all I could think about is how is this gonna affect me being a mom? Am I gonna still be here to be a mom? My children, again, they're still very young. I had so many things going through my head, through my mind. My
Yeah.
emotions were everywhere, but I think I was so accustomed to just dealing with it when it happens, as it happens, because that's what I've been doing. But it was new. I didn't have any answers. I didn't know anybody who had been through this. I
Mm,
didn't know, there are support groups for that. I found that out after the fact. I didn't know that beforehand.
mhm,
So like there were a lot of things going through my head. All I could do really was just hold on to my faith. My husband, who was there, he would grab my hand and really just talk me down. But I'm also looking at him like, I know you are like concerned,
Mhm.
but hearing, I asked as many questions as I could as far as like, what is the, will I be normal after this? Will I
Mhm.
be able to still do what I need to do? What's the recovery period? I'm asking all of these questions. And this doctor literally stayed in that office and answered every question. He made us feel so comfortable.
Mhm.
I asked, will I have to always have this in my head? Is there ever a time where I'll be able to get this removed? Yeah, I'm hoping he's gonna say, oh yeah, no, as
Mhm.
soon as maybe in this amount of time. His response was no. That kind of like womp womp
Mhm.
for me at that time because I somehow thought maybe it was just gonna be for like a period of time,
Mhm.
dry it all up, and then I won't have to deal with this no.
Mhm.
And his response was, "Because I'm an adult, fully grown adult
Mhm.
that has, um, accumulated this amount of fluid, I will always have to have this device in
Mhm.
my head." He said, "If I were a child and this happened as a child or a baby, then they would be able to as a child grows, the child would be it'll be able to be removed,
Mhm.
but I'm fully grown." So,
Mhm.
he was like, "No." And so I was like, "Okay." Um, and really it was just for me, all right, well, July 28th, we'll see what happens.
Mhm.
If I can be honest, I had a very like shallow moment because the thing that bothered me the most was the fact that I would have to shave my head. I was so worried about being bald head like
Mhm.
because my hair, yeah, I have locks now, but my hair was about this length at that
Oh,
time.
yeah.
Um
You definitely had
and I had
mane.
yeah, right? Yeah, I
Mhm.
mean, it meant something to me at that
Yeah.
time, and I guess, like, because I couldn't really control anything else, I guess that's the only thing that I was really, like, focused on at that time, but my husband was like, "Listen, it's hair, it's gonna grow back. Really let that go, it's really what he got other
Mhm.
things to be concerned about." And
Right.
so I did, I really realized that, but, my husband was, um, very strategic in the fact that he actually, was able to assign a team.
Okay.
The neurosurgeon had, his team, but he was able to have certain people in there, um,
Mhm.
to look after me, to be there with me when I opened my eyes, when I went to sleep, who
Mhm.
were in there with me that he trusted and knew because and I
Wow.
know that that's all attributed to favor.
Mhm.
'Cause everybody doesn't have that,
Right.
um, and they took care of me. They took care of me. I have a picture with some of the medical professionals
Mhm.
before I went into surgery, um, and they were right there to make sure I was good in the operating room with the surgeon and came out with me and everything. So, um, I don't even remember how long my surgery was.
Mhm.
And that's something right now I'm talking about it, but that's something that I don't think I really, um, retained. I don't think I asked how long was I in surgery, and I don't remember, but, um, came out and hair was gone, had hair on this side, but I still have my device. I can feel it right here. I can even feel the tubing, and I still deal with every day having to, understand that I accumulate still fluid. And the way that I can a lot of times, like, the barometric pressure and all that affects me.
Oh,
Um
wow. Okay.
Mhm, mhm. So where, sinus pressure might be minimal to some, it affects me in a very serious way. Like, I'm in a lot of pain. I still have, like, pressure behind my eyes. I can tell when weather is coming. I
Oh,
can tell
wow.
Mhm.
Man,
When
my
things are
my grandma
shifting.
used to
Yep.
talk about being able to feel it in her knees, but you can
Right.
tell because of the because of the pressure in your
Yes.
wow,
Yep.
wow.
And there are days like I might have every day might have migraines. Um, Still pressure in my eyes. I'll wake up with it. It might last throughout the day, but it's a normal way of life for me. So sometimes if I'm overstimulated,
Mhm,
if I have a lot of things going on, sometimes it causes me to like I literally will just I have to be very intentional about making sure like things are in front of me because I can forget.
okay.
I can if I'm exhausted, if I'm just running, doing a lot,
Mhm,
my mental clarity is not it's not there.
mhm,
Um and I can always tell when I've been doing too much, it affects me differently
mhm,
than how it would have been before.
yeah,
Um my energy levels, they shift.
mhm,
Sometimes, like I was talking about that exhaustion, I still experience that every now and then.
mhm,
But it's not just like being tired, it's literally like exhaustion.
mhm,
And I'm grateful to my family, my kids, my husband, because it really caused us to shift family dynamics.
mhm,
There were a lot of times, even during that recovery period, I couldn't really handle a lot of the mom, wife, household duties like
mhm,
that. My husband really picked up a lot of the slack.
mhm,
Um, and so there are times where I might say to him, I'm not the same person I was prior to 2016. And he'll be like, I know. But it took a while for things to even shift for him
mhm,
to learn how to deal with the after me
mhm,
and
mhm,
not, you know what I mean? Not expect the before me
mhm,
because I'm not that person
mhm,
anymore. I'll always be different from what I was,
mhm,
but I'm still able to be a wife. I'm still able to be a mother. I'm still able
mhm,
to work full time. I just have to do things differently and
yeah,
pay more attention
mhm,
to, how I'm feeling or why I'm feeling the way that I feel.
mhm,
I have to be conscious to make sure I'm drinking plenty of water because water actually helps to flush things out.
mhm,
Um, and there were a lot of things that like losing control in my hands. I would be holding something and just drop it. Pick it up, literally drop it again, but not intentionally.
yeah,
Like my hands would just lose its ability to hold.
mhm,
And at first I thought like I was crazy. Or like, what is wrong with me? What's going on? But I have to go back to when I was in the consultation with the neurosurgeon and I asked, will there ever be a time that this could be removed?
mhm,
And he gave me an example of a grown adult woman who had the same a VP shunt is what it's called.
okay,
Um, and she she had one placed. She was a teacher and uh got in the middle of a fight with students. Students she got hit in the head and that caused her to they had to go back in and replace it. He said that's the only other time. Other than that, he's never experienced or heard of a VP shunt being removed
remove, okay,
or replaced in an adult. This is years after like figuring things out on my own. Um, didn't really understand and know that my neighbor, literally 2 houses down from me, is the example that he gave.
no way.
I could not believe it.
Wait, so
I
how'd
could
you find
not
that out?
believe it. Right. So, one day, Leon and the kids were outside and he was in his yard. We knew our neighbor.
Mhm,
We knew she was, and she loves to do like landscaping work. And so she so happened to go to our walk over to our yard She was talking to Lee, and like I said, we know who she is,
Mhm.
but never knew this part of her life. And so I called and he interrupted, like they were in the middle of conversation and he paused our conversation. It was like, hold on, my wife is calling me. And so he was talking to me and I was telling him that I wasn't feeling well, that I had a migraine so bad that to the point where it was causing me to feel ill. I was feeling very sick. And so he said, he talked to me and we ended our conversation, hung up the phone, and he was like, I'm sorry, I was talking to my wife. She said she's not feeling well and started to tell her. And she was like, well, do you mind if I ask, like, why does she where does her migraines come from? And he told her about my story.
Mhm.
And she was like, "No way." She was like, "All this time you mean to tell me? Like, I never knew." She started sharing her story,
Mhm.
and she told the example that our neurosurgeon told us. And he was like, "Wait, you're the one
That's
that we heard
wild.
about in the doctor's office." And she
That
was
is
like,
wild.
"What?" Yes. I mean, and I know that that was God's way of giving me comfort and like support because like I said, I didn't know that there were support groups for this type of thing until like way after, but there were things that I was experiencing that I just chalked it up to like, I'm just not the same, you know,
Mhm. Mhm.
but not really understanding like why until this happenstance. I guess it wasn't a happenstance. It
Mhm.
was God. Um and a lot of the things that I was experiencing, she was able to really testify and comfort and be like, "No, you're not crazy. This is something that occurs." And so
Wow.
we've been a support for one another. Never, I didn't know until that day, like you're the example that the neurosurgeon gave.
That
And
is wild.
so, isn't that crazy?
Wow.
Crazy. And so, a lot of the things that I would experience, like she's been amazing support and just we've been helping one another and understanding like no, it's not just you.
Mhm.
This is something that you have to deal with. And so today, there are still struggles, there are still things that I deal with, but I'm thriving. Like I'm doing okay.
Mhm.
And I'm just grateful to still be here, be able to tell my story. And I hope that um I think that's another point. You're not alone. Even though, we all have our own stories and we all have our own experiences, but to understand that there's also somebody else who may not be the exact same.
Mhm.
Her reason for getting a VP shunt is not my same reason,
Mhm.
but we are able to support each other because we're not in it by ourselves. Like we now
Right.
know that we each share some of the same difficulties. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
So I have a question just about anybody who doesn't know you won't know that you are the voice, the
Uh,
soundtrack, the soundtrack to so many. Has this situation impacted your ability to like to sing and your ministry, like to do ministry? Has it impacted any of that in any
mhm.
ways?
Definitely has. Where lyrics used to come to me just like that. Listen, I could recall lyrics from way back in the day, or if we're just learning something, I used to be able to, oh yeah, I will retain it very quickly. That is not the case right now. There are sometimes now I might have to sing with my phone in my hand,
Mhm.
or even listening to if I have to learn music, even listening to it too much can become overload for
Oh wow.
me.
Wow.
Yeah, yeah. It's very different.
Wow.
It's very different. So sometimes I'll purposely not deal with it until like almost last minute
Mhm.
so that it kind of stays fresh.
Mhm.
Um, versus before I would listen to it, play with it, listen to it over and over and over again, and it would um stick.
Yeah.
It's not the case. Um, I write down things more, even, as a because I do speak. If I'm going over my notes, writing helps me to retain.
Mhm.
that helps me versus, like, just right off the bat. I'm not a techie like that, but right off the bat, typing out my notes
Mhm.
or whatever, I like to write it first. I'm a hearing officer, so every day I still have to talk to people. I still have to I create orders here, court orders for different cases. It doesn't affect me in that way, but sometimes, like, focusing, like, I have to intentionally, like, focus sometimes.
Okay.
Even speaking, sometimes the words will leave me just like that, and
Mhm.
I won't be able to sometimes I have to take a minute to think about, like, I know what I wanna say, but it's not coming out right away.
Mhm. Mhm.
Um, and that mixed with this new phase of life that we were talking about earlier, yeah, it's a time.
Perry, Perry.
Hey, that might as well be a part of my name at this point.
It's real. It's real.
It is so real.
Yeah.
So, yeah, all of that mixed in, like, it'd be something, but I get through it, you
Yeah.
know? Yeah.
So as we wrap, um,
Mhm.
I want to know, like you said earlier, like going through the surgery and going through just the whole situation of like trying to figure out what was wrong and all of that. You mentioned just being grateful to like be here, being able to
Mhm.
be here, raise your children, you know, be a wife, all of that, do ministry, do the thing, be with your family. You're grateful for I'm here and I have a solution to what was going on. But
Mhm.
you did, you know, you just told us that it's different.
Mhm.
There are a lot of things about life that are just different.
Mhm.
As you navigate that, what has changed in terms of like how you view yourself and like the things that are important to you and what you feel like you're good at and what has changed for you post surgery?
Yeah, so if I'm honest, I went through a really tough period where I don't know if I got depressed or what, but I really felt like almost like I'm not good anymore.
Mm,
Like, and I had to put things into perspective, but before I was able to put things into perspective, I went through that whole series of like, dang, like I used to be able to do this and I can't now,
mhm,
or I could, but it's different, or energy levels, and I got a young family, you know. So I went through all of that thinking I'm damaged. But again, I stand strong in my faith and I thank God for his spirit that causes us to have a fresh view, gives us a different perspective. And so that shifted to the fact that, wait a minute, you're a survivor. And instead of looking at what you were used to be able to do, you need to look at the fact that you're able. I get to. I
mhm,
get to live. I get to be a mother. I get to be a wife and a husband who still loves me and all of who I am and still supports me and is able to carry, where I'm lacking, he really does pick up the slack. And also looking at how far I've come because no, I'm not how I was prior to 2016. I'm also not where I was 2017 or 18.
mhm, mhm.
I am definitely a lot stronger. My kids, they understand and know, because for 1 to 2 of them, they don't know me any different.
Right.
Well,
Yeah.
3 of them, they don't know me other than who I am now.
Mhm,
My oldest son, I don't even know if he really remembers the me before.
mhm,
But they're great. They are understanding when mommy doesn't feel well. They know what that means. So,
mhm.
and they give me that space and that grace. But a lot of times they don't even know because I still press through. All of that.
Mhm.
Might pop a Motrin and keep on going, or Excedrin, whatever, I feel like is appropriate at that time. I do have medications that I'm supposed to take for migraines, but because of my life, I'm not able to take it at that time because it'll put me down or make
Mhm.
me, I can't drive or whatever. But um, I'm learning to deal with it,
Mhm.
and I've been dealing with it. So I'm a survivor, um, and really, I move by the power of God. I listen.
Mhm.
Anything that I do, whether it is ministry or you mentioned about singing or even mothering,
Mhm.
it is by God's power. And um, while I was at work one day, I was doing a case. I had a case where a lady, she was talking to me, and we somehow started talking about she was a survivor of brain cancer. And I was encouraging her, and she started encouraging me.
Mhm.
And she didn't know that I had my surgery and my struggle. A lot of times people don't know. And that's the thing. A lot of times what you see and what you think is evident, people don't see. They can't tell. They wouldn't know except you tell them.
Mhm.
And so I choose to share my testimony. I choose, and I'm proud to say, yes, I've been through this and I'm a survivor. So,
Yeah. And
yeah.
I think being able to share, I was saying to you before, like, before we started, that this is really the point of what the podcast is about, is that being unbreakable is not about like destroying everything in your path and like I win and everything kind of being buttoned up with a pretty bow, but it's
Mm,
about the fact that you keep going,
yeah.
that everything you deal with, the physical struggle, and then like what that means for you emotionally and mentally and psychologically as a woman. A lot of times our identity is attached to what we
Mm,
do as women. It's attached to who we are as a wife and who we are as a mother, who we are as a daughter, who we are as a sister. Like it's attached to that. And when we don't do those things the same way, like what does that mean?
mhm.
Oh, it means that I deal with that. I feel it and I'm still going. And that's what
Mm.
being unbreakable is about. It's like, yeah, it didn't destroy me. I just had to
Yeah.
live differently, you know? And I
Yeah.
think like, but as you said, having the power of God to help you live differently, right? Like that, I think is the story, like
Yes.
been through this. It was hard going through this now. It can be hard. Also, the operative word is going,
Yeah.
it's like, so that's the really incredible thing. And that's what I really hope that people hear. Um, you mentioned earlier, really an admonishment, particularly to women, that if you feel like something's off and something's wrong, keep pressing until you get an answer about that.
Yeah.
Um, and then for kind of the last part of this, I'm gonna to turn it over to you, but I want to say like I'm really just thankful for you. I mean, we have such a long history. Like, I
Mhm.
mean, so many years. It's actually making me think about how old I actually am. Like, wow, okay. I mean, man, the trips in the van during convention
Mhm.
with the music playing, and when you said music when it will overstimulate you. I'm like, how is that even possible
Yeah.
with as much it was just music 84/7. Like forget
Yes.
24, it was 84/7. It was learning choir music. It was just hearing random music. It was you
Yeah.
literally harmonizing with everything. I'm talking
Yeah.
like you would harmonize with like the radio commercials. It like it just never stopped. So to hear that, it's like, wow, okay, like things are different, but I'm just really
Yeah.
thankful for the opportunity to hear your story, and thank
Mhm.
you for sharing it in this space. And I hope that you get to share it like even more and expose it to expose many more people to it, and to just your strength as a person, and how you've been
Mhm.
able to navigate that. So thank you. That's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. Don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share the podcast with someone who needs to hear it. We really appreciate all of your engagement. We'll see you next time for the next episode of Unbreakable Her.